So this is my document in my folder, and this is an English translation of the Catalogue of Ships from the Iliad. And I'm going to show you the two basic annotation functions that Recogito offers, namely references to places and references to persons. In order to start annotating people and places in our document, we should activate our annotation window. And we do that by double-clicking on our document. If you want to annotate an entity that is identified either as a place or a person in your document, all that you have to do is just select it with your cursor. And there are two ways to do that. If your entity is just one word, for example, you can double-click on it and you will see that a little pop-up comes up in the editing window where you can actually classify it as a person or a place or an event. If your entity is made up of multiple words or a longer string of text, you can click on the cursor and drag it across the boundaries of the particular string that you want to annotate. And then you can identify it as a place, a person, or event in the same way. So for example, I want to identify Zeus and mark it up as a person. So I'm just going to double click on the string Zeus. And as you can see, basically what I have to do is to classify it according to the particular entity type that I have chosen, in this case, a person. I click on person and Recogito marks it up according to my classification. I can also decide to add a comment or a tag in order to further classify my entity according to, for example, an internal vocabulary. So for example, here Zeus is a personal name, but it also indicates a god, which is a type of information that I may want to add as a classifying tag. And so everything that I have to do is just type on god and give it an enter. And as you see, the tag appears in the space of the annotation. If I want to delete the tag, I just click on it once and this little trash bin is going to appear. I can just click on the trash bin and get rid of the tag if I don't want it anymore. Once we are done, we can click on OK and make sure that our annotation is saved. One of the nice things that Recogito does in particularly long and repetitive documents is to ask you if you also want to annotate to reapply the same annotation to identical occurrences of the same string along the text, which is something that may come useful if you have text where you have the certainty of the repetition of certain entities. In our case, we definitely want to reapply the annotation to all of the other occurrences of the name Zeus. So let's click yes. And there you go. Let's see what we can do in order to annotate place names. To annotate place names, I basically proceed in the same way as I did for my personal name. So basically, I can either drag my cursor on a longer string, for example, the city of Mykolaisos, or I can just double-click on the place name that I want to mark up, and Recogito is going to automatically give me that annotation. So this time, Mykolaisos is a place, and so I want to classify it accordingly. Let's click on place. As you can see, the annotation window changes slightly here. Now, every time you classify an entity as a place, what Recogito does is to try to match it against all of the available authority files or gazetteers and identify, the most suitable reference to one of the gazetteers that they have in order to allow you to retrieve additional information about that place, most notably the location and the coordinates of that place. So in this case, Recogito has run a recognition against Pleiades, one of the most important gazetteers of the ancient world, and it's offering me a possible match. The little map right here, the miniature map, is supposed to be helpful for you to distinguish whether the proposed match is reliable or not. What you have to do here is to verify that this match is correct or otherwise, of course. If I find that the match is correct, all I have to do is to click on confirm. And my annotation is going to be saved. I can just click on OK and go on. As you can see, my entity types are colored in a different way. If I'm not sure, or if I want to change that match with a different location, a different place, or a different gazetteer, I want to click again on my entity, and I can do two things. Either I can just get rid of this annotation entirely by clicking on the trash bin, or I can edit this match. And I'm going to show you what happens if I click on edit. What I see here is the so-called georeferencing window in Recogito. Now, essentially, what Recogito does is to give you several options of matches for the string that identifies the place in your documents and equivalent or identical strings from available authority lists or gazetteers. I'm going to tell you more or less what you can see in this window. As you can see, there's a map right here. And on the map, what you can see as the main points are basically the proposed locations and the proposed identifications for your place. If I click on this pointer, I'm going to be able to see variant names as they appear in the gazetteers and the options that Recogito gives me depending on which gazetteer has a reference to my place. In this case, as you can see, there are two possible gazetteers and two possible identifications. One is from Pleiades, identified in blue, and the little number that you can see here is a gazetteer identifier called a URI. And I also have access to a few basic information about this entry in that gazetteer that is supposed to help me identify whether this is the correct match or not. The second one that I can see here is the Digital Atlas of the Roman Empire, there. And once again, this little number identifies the URI for the place in that particular gazetteer. And once again, some additional information that should help me discriminate between these two possible matches. You can see that the same type of information is available right here in the left side column, and the two gazetteers are identified by a blue P and an orange D. By clicking on this part of the georeferencing window, I just reactivate the same type of location pointer that I had on the map. Another nice thing that I can do is also to activate a different base map depending on the type of document that I'm working on. For example, right here I'm working on the Iliad. I may not be interested in having a map layer that is a modern political map. So for example, I can change it with some satellite imagery from Mapbox, or even to a map of ancient places from the Digital Atlas of the Roman Empire, which may be useful for a variety of things. I'm going to select the aerial imagery, and at this point, I'm just going to choose which match I want to validate so that I can verify my place. In my case, it's definitely Mykolaisos. One more thing. If you are not sure, or if you cannot find the right match for your particular place, you don't necessarily have to find a gazetteer match. You can also flag the place to mark it as unidentified or unverified. And you get rid of this window by clicking on, of course, the little X right here. Finally, we want to save our annotation by clicking on OK. And as you may have noticed, all of your annotations from your document are automatically saved in the Recogito database. So if you want to get out of this window, you don't have to do anything. All of your annotations are already saved and you are free to go. Once you get a hand of these kinds of things, and you may want to do this kind of annotation a little bit more quickly, right? Particularly if you have long strings of text and long lists of place names or personal names, you may want to switch the annotation mode from normal to quick. And depending on the type of entity that you're annotating, Recogito is going to automatically classify the strings that you mark up as places or persons. So I'm going to activate the quick annotation mode for personal names, and I'm going to show you what that does. Everything that I have to do is just double click on each single string of text that I want to identify as a person. So double click, and so on, and so on. And as you can see, my annotations are colored by the same entity type as the person Zeus, which means that in the quick annotation mode, Recogito has automatically recognized which entities I wanted to recognize as personal names. And I didn't have to go through the full classification pop-up right here. And the same type of thing is, of course, available for places as well. You can do the same thing, and as you can see, your places are going to be annotated in the same way. And you can also, of course, reapply annotations and so on and so forth.